Hello everybody and welcome to the Penelope Possum channel with me, your host, Penelope the Possum. It's Spooky Scary Saturday. And since I'm stalling to play the level of Amnesia that's next, we're gonna be watching videos. Because, oh Nelly, I am not looking forward to that. Not at all. Thank you. Hello, Retro Caramel.
This happened.
Oh. Sorry, did it make a mess?
No, I caught it in time before it broke.
Oh, good. Hello, everybody. We're gonna start with this video by Dark Mind, and then we have Alter and IMR Scary Tales, which we all know and love IMR. So let's start with this. I accidentally viewed a little bit of this beforehand, so warning! Pew 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 pew! Later on I'll edit in a big old warning. Loud sounds. Loud, disturbing sounds warning. Pew pew!
An unidentified secret has been passing from a person to another that causes insanity, derealization and abnormal behavior. The government is warning you about this pandemic and issues cautions for you, your family and friends to follow. Do not engage in long conversations with strangers. Do not listen to underground music, as it may contain the dangerous information hidden. Turn off any electrical device after this message ends. Do not look at this picture ever.
Spooky. Also, I finished that art project that was distracting me so much. Almost. I need to finish painting it, but other than that, it's pretty well complete. Eating some broccoli and cheddar soup. It's really tasty. It turned out I wasn't sure where I was going with it at first. I mean, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure I'd be able to do it. But eventually the idea changed, and what it's become is something that I am really happy with. It's not completely finished yet. As I said, it still needs a bit more paint and a few other accoutrements. Yeah, sometimes you have a perfectly good idea, but it changes during the process, or the initial idea was I wanted to sculpt something, but I realized that would be boring and not really something I wanted to have. This item isn't exactly going to be visibly... You know what? Yeah, no, it is going to be visibly displayed in my room. But even if it isn't, and I end up using it for what I planned initially, it's a funny little thing. It makes me happy. It's sort of a creepy thing, but it's got a sort of funny. Oh.
Pero la tierra no nos pertenece.
Oh, this is Spanish. Yeah, it's creepy in a sort of charming and funny way. It's got googly eyes, a funny little smile.
Nosotros le pertenecemos.
This guy don't look so
Mi
good.
nombre es Mateo. Hace tiempo que el mundo dejó de ser lo que era. O más bien, volvió a ser lo que siempre fue, antes de nosotros. En nuestro paso por la tierra lo destruimos todo. Aniquilamos y bombardeamos
You can tell
cada
that's
ser
just a
vivo
cheap
que
teddy bear.
consideramos inferior. Pensamos que lo único digno de existir éramos nosotros. Un día la tierra se cansó. Sin mayor esfuerzo nos recordó que era ella quien dominaba y puso fin al peor parásito que haya existido, el hombre. Antes de esto, era solo uno más. Otro que nunca hizo nada y que cobardemente jamás reconoció ser parte del problema. Ahora lo entiendo. No se trataba de ser superior, solo de ser mejor de lo que era el día anterior.
I don't know Spanish well enough to know if these captions are accurate or not.
Desde aquel día, la voz de mi conciencia me ha acompañado. He intentado comunicarme, pero es inútil. Mi mente está desconectada de mi cuerpo. Irónicamente, extraño todo aquello que no supe apreciar. Pensaba era infinito. Y es que el hombre es incapaz de conocer el valor de las cosas, hasta que lo único que le queda es su recuerdo. Y así llegó al final.
Yum.
Regreso a la tierra donde
Meatloaf's good.
pertenezco. Pero no es el fin del mundo. Es el inicio de uno nuevo.
Oh, right. Yeah. May he rest in peace. Rest in pepperonis. What was that before? Not that. Okay, yep. There's the warning. Is this a reference to something I'm not understanding? Because I think it is.
I'm kind of a coffee junkie, so when Starbucks opened in my neighborhood, I made it a ritual to visit the place every morning. My office was on the way, so I would stop by the Starbucks drive-thru, get my coffee, and head to work.
That's
The
where the
Starbucks was
straw
pretty busy
hole
in the
is on
morning,
the
but
Starbucks
me
cup.
being a regular never had to wait more than 5 minutes. But it felt excruciatingly long the last time I visited Starbucks. In fact, now I don't go near Starbucks. I don't even like coffee anymore. The smell of coffee suffocates the air around me. It reminds me of him and how he made my life miserable. One day, I was waiting in the queue at the Starbucks drive-thru on a rainy morning. Even though the weather was bad, people were still out on the streets. Everyone was rushing to their workplaces. By the time I reached the window, people had started to get impatient, honking their horns, making loud noises.
Okay.
I took out some cash and, without looking at the window, said, "My usual, Liam, thanks." But when no one took the money from my hand or even uttered a single word, I got confused. I turned my head to the drive-thru window and saw a completely new face. It was a man in his late 40s. He had a pointy face with a goatee at the end.
Yeah. Okay, few notes on this guy here. First off, why does he look like a goat? Right? He kind of looks like a goat. The red hair makes me think he looks like Crowley. Yeah. However you'd say the demon's name from Good Omens. For those of you who don't know what Good Omens is, go read a book. Huh? Crowley.
It used to be Crawley.
Okay. Anyways, he has that same kind of red hair, but, you know, not as nice. I don't think he ever had a goatee like that. Also, his nose, I feel like it should be wider at the base than it is, but it isn't, and that's tripping me up. And his cheeks look wrong. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a human in my life with cheeks like that. Why is his neck so long? My boy's built all neck.
I don't know why, but he reminded me of a goat. He was looking
Because he
at
looks
me
like a
with
goat.
an angry frown. Sorry, where's Liam?
Liam's gone. Do you want me to take your order?
I ordered and waited with a grumpy face. He was rude, but I wasn't in any mood to start a brawl early morning. I took my coffee and drove away. The very next day, I went to meet a client at Starbucks. I was waiting inside the shop when I smelt a strong odor of sweat mixed with burnt coffee. Before I could turn around, that same barista from the drive-thru appeared in front of me.
Have you ordered already?
No, I'm waiting for someone.
Is it your boyfriend?
What the? That's none of your business, dude. Seeing me raise my voice, a few customers looked at my table. The barista smiled and said in a low, creepy voice,
I'm John. I hope you have a wonderful day.
And then he left. What a jackass. First he was rude to me, and now he's asking about my love life? The client arrived, and our conversation lasted for an hour.
Oh,
The
you can
entire
see him in the
time, I could
background. It's
feel
creepy.
eyes on me, like someone was watching me from the counter. Every time I looked there, I could see someone hiding behind the kitchen
Why
wall.
is there a KFC bag
The
in there?
entire night, I could not sleep.
Did anyone else see the KFC bag in the background? Also, this is a great frame to pause on.
Every time I closed my eyes, I could see John staring at me without blinking. The smile on his face was huge. I woke up late the next morning and had to rush to the office. As much as I hated the idea of going to Starbucks, my body screamed for a cup of coffee. By 11:30, I was in the queue of the Starbucks drive-thru. I wanted to keep it short this time. When I arrived at the window, John was already standing there.
Got late, huh?
One large cappuccino, make it quick. I patiently waited and disregarded anything that came out of his mouth. Once he handed me my coffee, I went to pay him. He took the money and said,
Did you party a lot last night? Is that why you're late to work today?
I put my car in drive when he suddenly inserted half of his body into my car, almost hunching over my face.
If you stop answering me, I'll make sure you never...
I have no idea. Probably because there's some... there might be some adult situations later on in the video. I think I got glue on my keyboard. Yeah, but I don't think she has mace. Surprisingly enough, despite the attack rate of women being so high, most women refuse to carry any kind of defensive measures, including batons or mace or stun guns. Even though they're pretty easy to get.
Never talk. None of your boyfriends will be able to save you.
And that pushed me over the edge. I splashed the hot coffee on his face and gave him a tight slap, buzzing his left eardrum. He backed away and I started to scream. Who the hell do you think you are? Are you nuts? I want to talk to the manager. Which stupid ass employed this moron? Chaos took place. The Starbucks manager came out and I was pulled aside. John stood there quietly, but I kept on screaming. I'm gonna call 911. I will sue all of you. Just wait. The manager stopped me and insulted John in front of everyone. He then fired him then and there. I was offered a month of free coffee as a gesture of apology. When I was driving away, I could see John standing on the side of the street. He was waving at me. Bloody creep! Before getting into the elevator, I walked to the bin in the corner to dump the coffee cup. And that's when I noticed it. The words, "Secret message," was written on the cup with a black marker. A straight line was drawn to the foot of the cup. Whoever wrote those words also struck out a few more words on the cup. And now it said,
Careful, you're extremely hot.
I called the cops and informed them about John, the way he was behaving. I feared he might turn out to be some crazy stalker. I stayed with one of my friends that night. Around 5 a.m. in the morning, I got a call from the local sheriff, and he gave me the horrible news. John snuck up inside the manager's apartment and slit his throat with a pocket knife. He was arrested from his house after the surveillance footage caught him coming out of the manager's house in the middle of the night. I felt responsible for making the manager a target of a deranged psychopath, but there's no way I would have guessed the heights of John's madness. I'm glad that he couldn't harm me, and for the rest of his life, he will rot in jail.
That's what you hope.
The story you just
ends
saw
up not
is
being
loosely based
usually
on
the
this
case.
creepy incident uploaded from a TikTok account. The owner of the account is a 20-year-old woman who went to the local Starbucks for her usual morning coffee. But once she made it back to her car, she noticed the barista had written something on the cup. As she checked, her stomach dropped. The Starbucks barista had left a creepy note for her. On the top of the cup, the Starbucks employee had written, "Secret message." He'd also drawn an arrow down to the small print on the back of the cup. On there, he had blacked out certain words in the sentence so that it read, "Careful, you're extremely hot." Even though the woman laughed at first, getting awkward with this sudden attention, but quickly she let out her worries, mentioning that she's never going back to that Starbucks again. She received mixed opinions after sharing the photos of the cup. Some said she wrote it herself, while others said she needs to be careful of a stalker in process. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.
What in the world? Alright, so I take a special interest in the fact that they mentioned her age, but they didn't mention the gender or age of the person who supposedly served her. In the story, it's said to be a 40-year-old man, but it could have been a young teenager or another girl or anything. I think it might have been meant either as a joke or something else. I don't know. All I'm saying, it's creepy regardless. It's just, I think she might have possibly overreacted just a little bit. Oh gosh, okay.
This happened in the summer after I graduated high school. My local Starbucks was hiring and I needed a job. They put me on the night shift, working from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.
That was a terrible face. Hold on. Can we go back to that face just
on the night shift.
Right there. What is that face? My guy, what is you doing? What is that facial expression? What is this expressing? What emotion is this? I've never seen someone pull a face like that.
Working from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. One night, around 1 a.m., I was
It
sitting
looked
alone
like they
in the
tried
shop.
to draw
The
him
streets
doing
were
like
pretty clear.
you know how in some pictures guys who are classified as F-boys will be like pulling the, you know, the face. That face that's, you know, them trying to look attractive or whatever. Or maybe he was just like doing that thing we do with our faces when we're really getting into something. He was emoting. But what was he emoting? What was that emote? My breath tastes like broccolis. Yeah, kind of like the duck lips for men. I remember when that trend was like the thing to do.
Except for the occasional car passing through the complex. I was taking advantage of the free Wi-Fi
There's
and
that
watching
face
videos on my
again.
phone when I heard a small bang behind me. A stack of cups was lying on the floor. I picked them up and I went back to my browsing. Again, 5 minutes later, the cups fell down. I figured the air from the AC knocked over the cups. I groan as I go to pick them up and wonder if I should turn the AC off. As I was in the middle of cleaning up the mess, a bang came from the back kitchen area. That's where we make the desserts. I was confused and slightly freaked out. I entered the kitchen, swinging the door closed behind me.
Is it just me, or is this animation from IMR a little subpar from what their usual is? It's a little jerky and stiff.
I saw nothing out of the ordinary except the Starbucks poster that we had hanging in the kitchen had fallen down. I rolled it up and sat it on the counter, making a mental note to tell the manager that it fell down the next shift. I went over to the thermostat to turn off the AC since the draft was knocking everything around. I turned it off and the next 30 minutes were silent. I was getting tired, so I made myself a coffee. I was sipping on my coffee, browsing Facebook when my headset beeped. That was strange, since we barely ever had any business at this time of night, but not unheard of. Welcome to Starbucks. How would you like your order? I looked up at the monitor, but nothing was there. That same thing happened several times up to the point of 2:30. My headset kept beeping every 2 minutes, but when I looked at the camera, there was nobody there.
Ooh,
A few
ghosts.
seconds later, the coffee machine malfunctioned, spewing foam and coffee everywhere. I freaked out and turned it off immediately. I remember turning it off after making my coffee, so I had no idea how this happened. I needed to use the restroom, so I went quickly in case any customers came. Coming back, I saw Starbucks cups stacked in the
don't-
shape of a pyramid on the counter. That was extremely
really
weird
don't
since they
know.
obviously couldn't stack themselves. It was probably the teenagers, I thought. I was debating
What
whether or not to call the
teenager?
cops since they were harassing me, but I decided to wait for a little more in case they come back. I
Bro!
glanced down at my phone for about 10 seconds, and when I looked back up, there were cups everywhere. Stacks and stacks of cups in the shape of a pyramid. I guess around 50 to 70 stacks. I was terrified. Something was here at the shop with me, and whatever it wasn't human. I scanned the place, but there was not a trace of anything. I knew my boss would flip a lid if she found this, so I started unstacking them. When I finished, it was around 3:15. I just wanted my shift to be over so I could get out of this place. Then,
Oh, also, there was just some absolute banana frickery going on at work today with scheduling. There was just... things were supposed to have happened that didn't end up happening, causing other things to have to be set into motion, causing lots of confusion for a lot of people, especially me, because I got told one thing, set everything in motion for that, and then I got told a different thing, and then got told this thing that was true at first was true all along, and I shouldn't have done anything.
there came the bang. It was from the kitchen again. As I stepped into the kitchen, the lights went out. I stood in the darkness looking around. My heart was racing in fear. I didn't know what to expect. Right then, I heard a humming sound echoing. The sound was coming from the kitchen sink. I walked close to it and took my face closer to the drain pipe. Yes, the humming was coming from there. Drops of sweat crowded my forehead. Is this all
Sink
real?
ghost?
Am I really hearing a woman's voice humming from the other side of the drain pipe? I closed one eye and tried to get a good look inside the pipe hole. Ah! What the? Suddenly, the tap started running, but instead of water, strong brewed hot coffee started pouring out from it. The force was so strong that the coffee overflowed the kitchen sink,
Okay,
dripping
this
from the
guy's
edges onto the kitchen
tripping.
floor. I watched in horror because it all seemed so unreal, and then the tap made a rumbling sound, like someone was stuck in it. Sprinkles of coffee came out of it, stopping its heavy flow, and then a hat squeezed out from the small
Ew.
tap. Yes, a giant bulbous head of a woman, only she wasn't human. Her hair was like octopus legs. Something slimy was dripping from them. Her demonic eyes were yellow pupils on black eyeballs. I've never seen anything like this. Instead of a nose, she only had 2 nostrils, and her mouth has no lips. She had gills like a fish instead of ear. Slowly, her huge, slimy, half-human, half-fish body started coming out from the tap. The sloppy, grotesque sound echoed inside my brain as she pulled herself out of the small hole. Her jaw was hollow and had huge, sharp fangs. She made a chuckling sound from her throat, and I got up screaming. Ah! I rushed to the exit and stopped after reaching the nearest Walmart. A few people saw me and sensed my trouble. They asked me what had happened, and I took them back to the Starbucks, saying I'd seen a horrible creature coming out of the tap. But when we all went back, everything was just as it was supposed to be.
My guy was on
No
drugs.
mess, no broken light, not a single drop of coffee on the kitchen sink. That humming sound was long gone as well. 10 years have passed and I still remember every detail of her demonic face. I don't drink coffee from Starbucks because I fear that coffee is the creature's gateway to our human world. The story you just saw is loosely based on the infamous story behind the famous Starbucks logo. That image in the center of the Starbucks logo is not a mermaid. She's actually a mythological siren, a female creature that lured mariners to destruction by her unworldly singing. In Greek mythology, the sirens were dangerous yet beautiful creatures who enticed nearby sailors to shipwreck on the rocky coast and die. Starbucks got its name from the author Herman Melville's Moby Dick novel. However, the famous siren logo came to fruition after the founders discovered her image while scouring old marine books. In 1971, the original Starbucks opened in the port city of Seattle.
Yes.
Since coffee beans typically traveled overseas on large container ships, the
Oh my
founders
gosh,
decided
geckos?
to use a seductive siren logo that would lure coffee lovers to its stores. And seductive she was. The original Starbucks logo was a bare-breasted female siren with two serpentine tails spreading apart. Some people even claim that the Starbucks logo is cursed. By turning the original Starbucks logo upside down, you can see the image of Satan. In 2014, Starbucks got in trouble after its employees were drawing satanic pentagrams and the number 666 in the foam of coffee. Do you think the famous Starbucks logo was hiding something terrifying like this?
No,
Let
I
us know
think whoever
in the
wrote this
comments.
was smoking some whack shit. What is up with people and smoking the weird shit? My god.
I work as a barista at Starbucks. I usually work the morning shifts as it brought more customers, hence more tips. One morning I was walking toward the Starbucks a couple blocks from my apartment. I noticed a woman sitting on the sidewalk in front of the door. She had a trolley bag beside her. At first I just assumed it was someone in desperate need of a coffee. But as I got closer, the dirty, tattered clothes told me she was homeless. The woman was rubbing the bottom of her forearms against the concrete. Suddenly she noticed me and got up, quickly walking away. I walked up to the door and looked down at the spot where she was rubbing her forearms. The concrete was stained a dark red, blood.
Yeah.
I figured I'd wash it off with some hot water before opening the shop, so I quickly brushed it off, blaming it on addiction. After getting as much blood off the sidewalk as possible, and sanitizing the door handle of the hobo grease, I opened the shop and prepared for the morning rush.
Wow. Alright, that took me a little bit by surprise. It shouldn't have. Fucking hobo grease. Wow.
Here's your coffee. Have a nice day. I and my coworkers were in full swing at work. One after the other, customers came and we handled the usual Starbucks mugs filled with brewing hot coffee. I was so invested in my job that I didn't realize it was that homeless woman standing in front of me now. Her face had a disgusting smile, flashing her rotten teeth. She slammed a $10 bill on the counter and said,
Once you're done screaming like a little girl, make me coffee.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. A flush of red covered her face. She got very angry and said,
Why?
It's not about you doing anything, ma'am. It's just...
I know what you're trying to say, that I'm not welcome into Starbucks because I'm homeless, because I don't look good enough to be a part of this crap store, right?
She spat on the floor of the shop, upsetting all the other customers, and I was in no mood to tolerate that.
Ma'am, if you don't leave, I'll have to call security. You can have your coffee for free, but please leave after that.
Coffee for free? So now he wants to be the big guy after insulting a poor old woman. Fine, I'll show you what I can do.
Saying this, she suddenly walked toward the
Whoa,
table.
what?
She then picked up a chair and threw it on the floor, creating a huge ruckus. People started leaving the Starbucks in fear.
Somebody stop that lady!
I went to grab her, but she elbowed me in the eye. It was that same
Ow.
bloody elbow that left a stain on the wall moments back.
Oh no.
As much
oh
as
no.
I got hurt,
Oh no,
I
you're
also
gonna
got her
get
blood in my
disease,
eye.
buddy.
My coworkers helped me get up. The lady grabbed her trolley bag and while walking towards the exit said,
Now you'll know my pain.
I didn't understand why she said that at the time. But the rest of the day, I served the customers with a black eye. After work, I came home and went to take a shower. I was done for the day. While washing my body with soap, I looked down at my arms and noticed some light red dots on my skin, similar to mosquito bites. No itching or burning, they were just there. After examining them for a bit, I ignored them. The next morning I woke up and walked to the bathroom. When I looked in the mirror, I couldn't believe it. My skin was extremely puffy and blotchy. Several areas were a deep red and felt bumpy to the touch. But
Yep,
the worst
he
part
got
was how
some
itchy
kind
the
of
infected
disease.
areas had become. Luckily, I didn't have work that morning, so I went straight to the doctor. The doctor looked over my body and asked me several questions. She concluded that I simply had a bad case of hives. She gave me an injection to bring down the reaction. I picked up some anti-itch cream on the way home and went to bed for a nap. But as time passed, my rashes grew bigger
hobo
and
blood
worse.
got into him.
Luckily, there was
Anyone's
no spot
blood
on my
getting
face, so I
into
could still
you
go to work.
is generally
I
bad
started
news
wearing
bears.
full sleeves to hide the marks. But my God, the itching. I itched all day. It felt like tiny bugs with spiky legs were crawling underneath my clothes. I would rub my arms against the counter in an attempt to secretly scratch them. When I was behind the coffee machine, I would scratch furiously at my clothes before coming out with a smile on my face and calling for the customer to pick up their drink. When there weren't any customers in the shop, I would run to the bathroom and scratch my arms and legs, chest and stomach, shoulders and back, and scrub my hands as much as possible. After a few hours, I went to the bathroom and noticed I was bleeding, with scratch marks all over my arms, chest, and stomach. The bumpy texture grew worse as well. The bumps had formed into clusters and clumps. The heat from the coffee maker was making me sweat as well, which began to irritate the blisters that were beginning to form. I began to feel delirious. I've never fainted or passed out before, but I felt like I was going to. I began to feel lightheaded.
Hey, this isn't a grande pumpkin spice latte.
A customer's stern voice brought me back to my senses. Excuse me?
This is a tall. I asked for a grande.
With a couple of customers in line, I politely asked him to wait and went to take back the coffee cup, when I ended up screaming. Once I touched the coffee cup, a layer of my skin got stuck to it like a sticky note. The customer stepped back in disgust and everyone stared at me like I was some freak in a scary movie. That night I was fired. The shop closed early.
Well, that seems a little...
My manager told me that they can't compromise the hygiene of the place.
I mean, I
The
guess.
apartment where I stayed banned me from entering. Tenants don't want to live with someone who has infections all over their skin. I live on the streets now, just like that homeless woman. My skin feels like fire ants crawling all over my body. I'm sure you've seen those photos of third-degree burns that people get when they spill boiling water or grease on them. That's what these look like now. My hair is falling out. My teeth are starting to fall out, too. I now know what that homeless woman meant when she said,
Now you'll know my pain.
The story you just saw is loosely based on this footage recorded at a Starbucks outlet by a customer. The customer went to Starbucks for his usual morning coffee when he saw a woman walk into the store holding a trolley bag. She had very bad hygiene. She was screaming at one of the baristas while throwing fits of outrage all over the place. The woman screamed at the top of her lungs, shouting profanities to the certain barista. Her behavior was so shocking that everyone at the store stopped and watched her go crazy. At one point, the woman even walked to the nearby table and grabbed an empty chair. She picked up the chair and stomped it on the floor furiously. Even before leaving the store, she cursed the Starbucks outlet and the barista, giving everyone trauma for life.
Dang. That's just what happens sometime. I still have some time. Which else should we watch? Yeah, the art style is usually what's scary for these videos. I think we watched this one, right? Yeah, it takes all kinds to make the world go round. Yep. No, we're not watching Little Baby's Ice Cream again. You know what?
Grinning teeth in the blackness. A man is running down a dark hall, glancing over his shoulder in terror. He carries a clipboard and wears a standard Foundation lab coat. Behind him, in the shadows, a figure floats toward him at a steady pace. He tries to run faster, but can't seem to increase the distance between them. A long, gnarled hand with
like
jagged fingernails stretches toward his shoulder. Fingers curl around to grab him when he wakes up in bed, sitting up and screaming. He catches his breath. It was just a dream. He gets out of bed, splashes water on his face, and puts on his lab coat. He heads out the door for work.
I guess
of all the sounds that can be heard on an average day,
I guess even when you work with literal living nightmares, you can still have nightmares, huh?
at an SCP Foundation site, screaming is probably one of the most common. When working alongside anomalies that range from bizarre to deadly, shrieks of fear, pain, and shock are just another part of the job. But as Dr. Simon makes his usual walk to the break room in search of a fresh cup of coffee, the scream that rips through the quiet makes him freeze in place. The coffee cup slips from his grasp, smashing to pieces on the floor, and he barely even notices the mess. He stares at the closed door, listening to the sound. He has never, in all of his years at the Foundation, heard such an expression of pure, unadulterated terror. He waits for whatever will bring the scream to a halt, but such mercy doesn't come. There's no wet gurgle that cuts off the sound, no wailing D-class escorted from the room to be thrown back in his cell, no thud of a body slumping to the ground. Whoever is screaming just keeps screaming again and again until his voice begins to rasp. Dr. Simon can't resist his curiosity, the insatiable need for understanding that led him down the path of scientific research in the first place. He knocks on the door of the room until supervising researcher Dr. Myers answers, brow furrowed in confusion at the interruption. Before his colleague can admonish him, Dr. Simon inquires about the nature of the anomaly in the room. What could possibly cause a man to make that sort of sound without killing him? Dr. Myers shuts the door behind him, takes Dr. Simon aside, and explains that the culprit is nothing but a simple doll. Dr. Simon can't help but laugh at this, shaking his head in disbelief. Does the doll do anything? Does it attack its victims with a knife like Chucky? Does its head spin around in a circle? Does it vomit pea soup? Does it crawl along the ceiling and spit spiders and maggots? No, Dr. Myers shakes his head. The doll simply sits there. It was first recovered from a child's bedroom in an allegedly haunted house and seems to trigger extreme, inexplicable, yet all-consuming terror in anyone who observes it for a prolonged period of time. Otherwise, it does not appear to do any damage. Well, that sounds a hell of a lot more interesting than watching research assistants throw different objects into SCP-914 for the 100th time, or filling out paperwork, or any of the other inane busywork Dr. Simon has been saddled with lately. Still chasing that undeniable curiosity, Dr. Simon makes a request. Will Dr. Myers assign him to examine the doll? Specifically, can he be granted permission to observe it up close and experience its fear-inducing effect for himself? Dr. Myers recognizes the spark in his younger colleague's eye, the fascination with the dark and unknown that led so many of them to work at this very Foundation. How can he say no to that? Besides, the anomaly is largely harmless, and isn't going to do any damage that a trip to an in-house counselor and some prescription tranquilizers can't fix. He agrees, and Dr. Simon is transferred to his team the very next day. As Dr. Myers unlocks the door to the doll's containment chamber, Dr. Simon can feel the electric surge of anticipation beneath his skin. He notices his hands are sweating, and he wipes them on his lab coat quickly. Best to maintain a professional appearance, an air of unmoved confidence. Now, he thinks to himself, let's get a look at this infamous nightmare doll. When he enters the room and lays eyes on the thing, he can't stop his face from falling in disappointment. He was expecting something grotesque, a cracked china doll with dark, vacant eye sockets, a soft-sewn doll made from leather of indeterminate origins, but instead, there's just a lumpy clay figure sitting in front of him, loosely constructed into the shape of a nude woman. At least he assumes her to be nude, since the doll has no clothing. The figure isn't detailed enough to be certain. He briefly considers turning around and leaving the room right away, but he was so insistent in asking to be reassigned, he can't just give up so quickly. He'll examine the doll more closely. He asks if he may touch the doll, and Dr. Myers responds in the affirmative. He lifts the doll, feeling its weight in his hands. As he turns it over to examine it, a large piece breaks off. He gasps, horrified at the prospect of damaging an anomalous item on his first day of working with it. But Dr. Myers reassures him that this is completely fine. That curiosity rears its head again, and Dr. Simon breaks off another part, just to see what might happen. He snaps off pieces until all that remains is a rectangular clay piece that vaguely suggests a torso and pelvis. All of a sudden, the remnants of the doll vanish from his hands. He looks up and sees the same clay doll lying on the floor 1 meter away. That's not scary at all. It's fascinating. Dr. Simon is just about to pick up the doll and try breaking it apart once again, when a peal of cruel, crazed laughter sends a chill down his spine.
Oh.
It isn't Dr. Myers laughing. The voice sounds like it belongs to a woman, though it's difficult to tell much from the twisted cackle. He spins around, searching for the source of the laughter, but there's nothing, and no one in the room with him except for the doll. Minutes pass this way, with the laughter ringing in his ears, until all at once, all goes silent. He turns his eyes back to the doll, but it's gone.
Oh,
He's just about to leave the room and inform Dr. Myers when he catches a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eye. He turns to see what is there, and immediately wishes that he hadn't. The first thing he sees is her smile, stretched painfully wide, tongue waggling out from between her parted teeth. Then her eyes, rolling wildly in her head, dilated pupils locking onto him with a stomach-churning intensity. Long snarls of black hair drift behind her as she floats toward him, feet off the ground, just barely dragging the tips of her toes along the floor. He would describe the thing as a woman, but she doesn't look quite human. Her proportions are all wrong. Fingers long and sharp, waist cinched in, as if she were wearing a tightly laced corset. Neck so narrow that it shouldn't be able to support the weight of her head. Though her mouth does not move from the cross between a grin and a grimace, she can hear the laughter again, growing louder and louder, bouncing around the inside of his skull. There's that scream, the sound he heard while walking past the locked door only 1 day ago. The sound of a man discovering that, no matter how much technology they invent, or how many cities they construct to convince themselves otherwise, humans are still prey, still animals cowering in a dark corner, while a predator advances toward them. For a moment, he wonders who is screaming, but the raw soreness in his throat tells him that it's his own voice being heard by passers-by in the hall now. The woman drifts closer and closer, moving at a slow and steady pace.
Really
as every hair on Dr. Simon's body stands to attention. Every primal instinct in his body commanding him to run, to protect himself, however he possibly can. He scrambles backward, afraid to take his eyes off the figure, no matter how horrific the sight of her is. He doesn't want to think about what she might do while his back is turned. He takes one step, then another, until his back hits solid stone. The wall. She quite literally has him cornered, and there is nowhere to run. Like a rabbit face to face with a snake, all Dr. Simon can do is tremble, pale and helpless, as the figure draws near. Her grotesque face stretches toward him, mottled gray flesh, too many teeth, and inhuman eyes only inches away from his own face. Her mouth opens even wider than it was before, wider than he ever could have imagined, and he braces for the worst thing he can think of. But no pain comes. Instead, an ear-splitting scream rips from her throat, a gust of hot, sour air invading his nose and mouth, and the figure vanishes. Dr. Simon forgets all of his professionalism in that moment, sprinting out of the room and not stopping for a moment until he is safely on the other side of the containment chamber door. There, Dr. Myers is waiting for him. Well, Dr. Myers eyes him with interest. Was his curiosity sated? As the adrenaline slowly leaves his body and his heart rate returns to normal, Dr. Simon nods. Now he understands exactly why someone would scream like that in the presence of a simple doll. Dr. Myers places a friendly hand on the younger man's shoulder, reminding him to take a deep breath and let go of the anomalous terror. The worst is over, and the doll, and its accompanying entity, will not bother him anymore as long as he does not observe it for a lengthy period of time again. He congratulates Dr. Simon as well, informing him that he is the 25th person to observe this anomaly, and only the 4th to do so willingly. So Dr. Simon gives himself a pat on the back, thanks Dr. Myers for the opportunity, and returns to his office. A little bit of mind-numbing paperwork is welcome after that much excitement.
Yeah.
A couple of hours pass, and Dr. Simon finds himself beginning to droop. Whether it's the resulting crash after such a spike in adrenaline, or simply the malaise that takes hold most weekday afternoons, he knows the cure. Another cup of coffee. His favorite mug broke the day before, but thankfully there are plenty more mugs in the break room. He helps himself to a mug shaped like an owl, and is delighted to find that Dr. Saboya put on a fresh pot of coffee. He pours himself a cup, and strikes up a conversation with the other researchers in the room, recounting the story of his encounter with the doll, taking a moment for a self-effacing laugh at the memory of how unbelievably frightened he was. The others commiserate, sharing stories of their most harrowing encounters on the job that turned out to be perfectly fine. Dr. Saboya is in the middle of an anecdote about her first day on the job, wherein she found herself assigned to SCP-173 and was so terrified to blink that she carried around eye drops to keep her eyes from drying out, when Dr. Simon's eyes suddenly go wide. She asks him what the matter is, but all he does in response is recoil and let out a guttural, almost animalistic scream, dropping his new coffee mug in the process.
Oh no, the
other
mug.
researchers surround him, attempting to check him for any physical ailments. All the while, he stammers and babbles in the incoherent language of the utterly panic-stricken, repeating that she followed him, that she's here, that she's coming right toward him. As they press the point further, Dr. Saboya is able to put the pieces together enough to draw a conclusion. He is claiming to see a manifestation of the same entity he encountered earlier, floating down the hall in pursuit of him.
But
That's impossible, she insists. The entity is incapable of breaking containment. He must still be experiencing residual psychological distress as a result of his encounter. They'll escort him to his office and administer a mild sedative to calm his nerves, and he'll realize that he isn't in any danger. But before the researchers can say another word, they all suddenly collapse to the ground, the
What
floor
the
of the break room littered with their limp, unconscious bodies. After an indeterminate amount of time has passed, Dr. Saboya awakens with a splitting headache, a rush of nausea, and the feeling that she was just dreaming about something awful, but she can't remember what it was. She
I
quickly
hate
snaps back to
those.
alertness, gently shaking her colleagues awake. One by one, they rouse, with one exception. No matter what they try, no one is able to wake Dr. Simon. He is moved to the medical department for observation, where he remains in a coma for 3 days before he mysteriously passes away. Though his death cannot be
no.
directly attributed to his observation of the doll, Dr. Myers has his suspicions. He is especially troubled by the implication that the entity somehow broke containment. He requests reclassification of the entity, SCP-136, to Keter class, but the request is denied, higher-ups citing the possibility of a psychic attack by a different anomaly in the same facility. Years pass, and Dr. Myers puts the incident out of his mind. Then, one day, another round of experimentation with SCP-136 is ordered. A handful of Class Ds are shoved into the room, and Dr. Myers stands outside to supervise and ensure none of them leave before they are authorized to do so. Like clockwork, the sound of their screams follows around 20 minutes later. As the experiment concludes, yielding the usual results, the guards remove the subjects from the room with Dr. Myers' help. He is pulling a man toward the door by the elbow when everything goes black. Dr.
Oh,
Myers
it's
is
happening
woken by the
again.
sharp sting of a slap to the face, and a worried guard telling him that he collapsed with no apparent cause. As for the 3 Class Ds used in the experiment, they were left comatose and died days later. Memories of
Okay.
Dr. Simon come rushing back, and Dr. Myers reaches out to his supervisors once more. This time, he requests a reclassification and reevaluation once more. His request lands back on his desk, stamped with the same disheartening word:
What the heck?
denied. Again and again, the cycle repeats itself. SCP-136 expands its influence beyond its containment, leaving victims comatose and then dead. Those who are knocked out temporarily by its influence experience violent night terrors for months following the incident. Like the wounds of a psychic attack have left scars on their minds. The reach of the entity seems to be expanding, and its power growing. One day, while reluctantly performing yet another test with SCP-136, the D-Class in the room vanishes altogether.
What the?
No trace of him can be found anywhere in the vicinity. The unprecedented escalation is the straw that breaks the camel's back, and Dr. Myers pens an impassioned plea. Reclassify SCP-136 as Keter and allow him to find a way to terminate it for good before it harms or kills any more of his researchers. The O5 Council themselves officially declined his request. When I first learned about the tragic fate of Dr. Simon and the subsequent horrors that followed, I could not get the images out of my mind. I was determined to get to the bottom of what exactly occurred and why on earth the O5 Council would deny requests to reclassify or attempt to terminate the deadly entity. After some, let's call it, bureaucratic interference, I was able to get my hands on the official file for SCP-136. It is currently classified as Euclid, though I have some concerns about that decision that I will get to in a moment. SCP-136 refers to two phenomena under that shared designation, SCP-136-1 and SCP-136-2. SCP-136-1 is a doll of varying appearance, though usually manifesting as a female figure made from cloth, wood, metal, or clay. Currently, the Foundation has not been able to measure anything unusual about the doll itself on an empirical level. However, this being the SCP Foundation, it is of course not an ordinary doll. This brings us to SCP-136-2, the subject of my deepest concerns. SCP-136-2 is an incorporeal nude or partially nude figure, whose gender presentation corresponds to that of the form that the doll takes. Ordinarily, this is female, but the doll does appear in a masculine form approximately 10% of the time. It manifests once the doll has been viewed for a duration of approximately 20 minutes, and the first sign of its appearance is the sound of creepy laughter, followed by a period of eerie silence. The doll disappears, and the figure, ranging in size from 1.9 to 2.1 meters, appears to take its place. Upon appearance, SCP-136-2 is posed in a provocative manner, and will move through the air at a pace of 0.2 meters per second toward the subject or subjects that observe the doll. As it grows closer, the laughter grows louder. By the time the entity is within 1 or 2 meters, the victim will be frozen in fear, will collapse to the ground, or will back up until hitting a wall. When the figure reaches 5 centimeters of the subject, it will scream once, then vanish, before reappearing in its original location. The appearance of this entity has been characterized as deeply disturbing, with an unnaturally wide mouth, bared teeth, enlarged irises, and bloodshot eyes. Exposure to SCP-136-2 has been linked to night terrors for up to 6 months following the initial encounter. Originally, the entity was never seen breaching containment. Obviously, this was not, in fact, the case. In spite of the life-threatening incidents linked to SCP-136, its official containment procedures state that, quote, no extraordinary containment procedures are necessary. It is kept in a standard 10 by 10 by 10 meter concrete containment room, wherein SCP-136-1 is locked in a transparent plastic case. There is no video surveillance of the room when it is not being actively examined. Only Class D personnel are permitted to enter the chamber more than once in a 30-day period. But why is this the case? If SCP-136 is indeed dangerous, posing a threat to Foundation staff and causing significant loss of life, as well as damage to employee morale, why not increase the security of its containment? Why not upgrade its class to Keter? Why not permit the team to attempt to destroy it, neutralizing the internal threat? Well, the rabbit hole of research that I tumbled down during my investigation of SCP-136 led me to the answer. Dr. Myers, a member of the original research team assigned to SCP-136, filed a series of complaints and requests with the O5 Council. As you know by now, these requests were denied, with seemingly no explanation. Well, as is often the case at the SCP Foundation, there was more to the story than there first appeared. Dr. Myers was removed from his position, and a note was added to the official SCP-136. 136 is proving valuable for enhanced interrogation. Memos on the subject, which I cannot disclose how I gained access to, revealed that SCP-136 was eventually removed as a potential research subject entirely in favor of an interrogation tool to be used against members of groups of interest. The records of these interrogations were sealed, but I attempted to uncover more about when these enhanced interrogations ceased, presumably due to the intervention of the Ethics Committee. I hope that I'm mistaken, that some vital information has eluded my grasp, but as far as I can tell, they never did. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher
That
today.
is
Now go and watch another
terrifying.
entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-5853, Ticky Taffy Town.
That's more terrifying than the usual, you know, things we get from the SCP Foundation, yeah? Like, that was genuinely... Especially the part where they were using it as an interrogation thing, like an advanced what could you possibly get from somebody who's just screaming? Also, I find it somewhat ironic that the SCP Foundation will have an ethics committee. Mostly because almost everything they do flies in the face of all ethics. Anyways, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. I'll catch you guys Tuesday. And thank you for hanging out with me, but I gotta go play Possum for a little while now. Bye. If you're here watching the video after I've edited it and uploaded it to YouTube, hi! Maybe go check out my streams. Every Saturday we do this thing live called Spooky Scary Saturdays. I don't always upload it on a Saturday. I don't upload consistently. That's my bad. Editing takes a lot out of me, and I don't always, you know, have the time between social engagements and etc. But if you like the video, like it, comment down in the comments. Ethics in the SCP Foundation seems ridiculous, or don't. I don't really have any control over what you do. Be good people, do good things, make the world a better place. And stay awesome, Possum.